Hi everyone, Alan here with Discovering Buddhism, presented to you by Vajrayana Institute. I hope you're well. I hope we can maintain our streaming right through the session. And you'll notice that we have changed the time to 6 o'clock, and we're hoping that this will help the streaming to not be interrupted. Slightly less busy time. Anyway, we'll just do our best with the technology. Hope you got the notes. I just sent out the notes today for today's class. It's the third class on mind and its potential, and we'll be looking at those topics that are there on the notes, and also start off with some questions from last week. But before we do anything, I was actually hoping to have the screen at the side like we had last week. I can't seem to get it, unfortunately, which had a place for the chat to happen. So you could say hello and make a comment or even ask a question. I just can't get it to appear tonight. I don't know why. But anyway, we'll just do without it. Hopefully I'll be able to unravel what's happened and get the chat back. It's good to have chat because I can see who's there if anyone wants to say hello. And if you're new and you'd like to join the group and get some notes and you're watching it on YouTube, my email is Alan, and the name's Alan, and the email is almarsh, all one word, ALMARSH, @mail.com.au. Aussie mail is spelled OZEMAIL.com.au. almarsh@aussiemail.com.au. So if you just send me an email, I'll be able to put you on the mailing list. And also, if you've already on the mailing list and you've got questions that come up, just email me them and I can respond to them during the week. So that's the best we can do with no live classes for the foreseeable future. We're all in lockdown here in Sydney. So we'll just have to manage with live streaming for the next few weeks or maybe even months. So let's, as always, we start with a few minutes meditation, and that's breathing meditation to just settle our minds, to just unwind from the day. And we use our breath, mindfulness of breath as the object. So as we explained last week, all that is just focusing on the movement of the breath, which is always there, but usually we don't take any notice of it. And we can focus either at the nostrils, just the top lip where the air enters and leaves the nostril, or we can focus further down at the abdomen, rising and falling. And we can also have a wider scope of observation, which is just the whole body moving with each breath. Right, so whatever's most comfortable. You could be sitting cross-legged or on a chair or lying down. Main thing is that the body is relaxed and the spine is straight. That's one important thing. And then the thing is to put our mind on this one object, which is the movement of the breath, without changing, judging. There's no right or wrong breath. And the second thing we're doing with our mind is observing what's happening. This is called introspection, where we're just sitting on the side and checking whether we are actually focusing on the breath or have we wandered, has our attention strayed, which it often has. So this is like the check, quality control. So if it's wandered, we actually just notice that. It's usually a thought, could be a sound. And just by noticing the thought, and usually can help to identify it, oh, it's what I'm going to have for dinner later, or I'm thinking about what happened this morning. Or you can just give it a word like a memory or a plan, but then let it go. Once you see what the distraction is, let it go. Patiently come back to the breath. Breath is the home base. And so the mind is very active. It's focusing on the breath, but it's also checking on the lookout for these distractions. The sooner we notice the distraction, then the more carefully we're doing the practice. It could take a while to notice that we're distracted. We get swept up in the thought. All right, it's only a few minutes, so we'll just begin. Get comfortable. Okay. We're just bringing our attention inwards. We're letting go of the busy day we've had, all those distractions and thoughts. You can just relax, let go. Spend a moment to think how fortunate we are to be able to do some practice together, meditate, study the Buddha Dharma, the teachings of the Buddha. We're doing all this not just for our own benefit, but for the benefit of others. The Mahayana motivation is to ultimately become an enlightened being, liberated and enlightened for the benefit of others. Now we just come into the body, scanning the body, making sure the spine's straight, shoulders relaxed. Eyes can be closed or just gazing gently ahead. Feeling the contact of the body with the chair or the floor. With each out-breath, have a sense of releasing, physically letting go, mentally letting out, releasing all the discursive thoughts. And then gradually becoming more aware of the breath, coming and going. Just one breath at a time, following the full flow of the in-breath and the full flow of the out-breath. Also, a part of the mind is just checking, watching what we're doing, on the alert for distracting thoughts. When we notice we've wandered off the breath, notice that. That's just the practice, being aware and gently letting go of our attention on the distraction and patiently coming back to the breath. one breath at a time, staying with the breath. Okay, just come back to earth and relax. So we'll just have a quick look at these questions from last week. If you've got your notes there. First one, what are the two main types of mental activity? Okay, so there's many ways of classifying mental activity, and this is one of the simplest. And we can probably relate to it just in normal Western psychology. Sensing is the first, and the second one is conceptualizing. But a sensing function refers to the five senses, where the sounds, the sights, the tastes, and so on. So these are called sense direct perceptions, and they rely on the physical senses. And then, if we look at it a bit more closely, Buddhist psychology said this: for us to be able to perceive a sense object, we need, first of all, the object, such as a flower, and then we need the sense faculty, the ability to actually perceive that object, and that includes the eye organ, of course, the eyeball, and it also includes this ability, what's called an eye consciousness. An eye consciousness. So we'll look at that eye consciousness when we look at the main minds. It's a type of main mind, eye consciousness, the ability to actually see things. And we also need a mind, which is a previous moment of consciousness. Remember when in our first class we talked about the cause of where does mind come from? It's non-physical, definitely non-physical. It's not the brain. The brain is there as like a receptacle for the mind. We've got the brain and we've got the mind in a human body, then we've got a human mind. The brain is a condition of having a human mind, but it's not actually the mind itself. So we need this. The consciousness is said to be caused by a previous moment of consciousness, like an infinite chain of causes of consciousness, which goes back without beginning and goes forward without beginning, without ending. So we need the consciousness, which was caused by a previous moment of consciousness. So sensing can be valid, I'm not going to go into too much detail because I'll be teaching the class from last week, but we can have mistaken sensing. So the common, very Tibetan Buddhist example is people with hepatitis will see everything as yellow because of the physical defect. But it could be some other reason. It could also be, I think I gave the example of people who have nothing wrong with their sense organs, but they and the doctors can't find anything physically wrong, but they have these either permanent or physical inability to see. It used to be called hysterical blindness. I'm not sure what it's called nowadays, but just something in the mind that is preventing the physical apparatus from seeing. And the Tibetan Buddhists would probably say that's sense faculty, that part of the mind that senses eye consciousness. So that's the sense faculty. The conceptual faculty is any type of mental activity. So this is just, it covers the whole range of our discursive thoughts when we're trying to do that breath meditation, and all those thoughts that come in, memories. It could be visualizing, imagining, it could be remembering, planning what's going to happen. So all these different discursive or different types of thoughts all involve this idea of mental activity, conceptualizing. So some conceptualizing is valid and some is mistaken. So we're going to look a bit more on what this means tonight. I remember we mentioned that 4 misconceptions, ways of incorrect conceptualizing or thinking, the big ones that actually affect our happiness and non-happiness, our way of life, our predicament, whether we're doing well and we're happy or whether we're feeling miserable. First, by the way, Tibetan Buddhist psychology talks a lot more about misconceptions, often called delusions or afflictions, wrong ways of thinking, than they do talk about right ways of thinking, because as unenlightened beings, we're very much overwhelmed with wrong ways of thinking. So we need to be able to understand what these wrong ways of thinking are, and by doing that we can move to right ways of thinking. Delusions is what often they translate the words. I'm not sure what the Sanskrit word is, but delusions, or it can be misconceptions or afflictions, mental afflictions. So seeing impermanent things as permanent, something that we tend to do with the outside world and also with our conception of ourselves. We forget that everything, both physical and within our own mental consciousness, is impermanent. And seeing the self as having a very solid existence, when in fact we'll see as we go through this course that the self is subject to cause and condition, it has no inherent existence. It exists but dependent on causes and conditions. So this is a bit long for a question, answering the answers. So let's move on to what are the main primary minds. So we just looked at this different way of defining what's happening, mind function. So we looked at the main minds, which is like, to me it seems to be like the ability of the mind to do certain things. So there's these main minds, often called primary consciousness, and they include the 5 senses and mental consciousness. So these main minds are just the abilities. Often we talk about the mind as a mirror, a perfect mirror, and when something comes in front of the mirror, it can perceive that. So if we have a flower comes in, we see something physical there. Or if we have thoughts coming in. So these different aspects of that pure mirror mind are these what we call primary minds. Okay? So part of the mirror reflects the eye consciousness, part of the mirror of the mind reflects nose, and part of it reflects mental consciousness. So this ability to reflect it's just a potential. And you'll see, we saw last week that they are neutral and passive. So this part of the mind is just an ability to see these different mental objects, which are actually called mental factors. So we also saw that these main minds or primary minds can only reflect one thing at a time. If it's seeing something, the mind can only do that one thing. And if it's hearing, can only do one thing. It looks, when we're doing lots of things like walking out in the outdoors, we can hear things, we can see things, we can touch, we can feel the air on our face. But what's happening is the mind is going from one input to another very quickly. So in Buddhist psychology, we can only have one mind operating at a time, one function of mind operating at a time. Okay, so the mental factors, is that the other question? Let's just looking back. Yes, so there's this blank screen of, yes, so there's this blank screen of, we used the analogy last week of the cinema, the picture theatre with the blank screen, which are the main primary mind, and then when the film starts, all these different actions and lights and colours and so on are going onto the screen into what we call mental factors. This is a very loose analogy to this example, but these mental factors, and there are 51 altogether, and because it's fairly short course, this one, we're not going to go through each of the 51, but if you'd like to go into more detail, Tubten Yeshi's transcript, the one that was sent out with the first class, the transcript of her teachings of this course, she goes into quite a lot of detail with the different mental factors. She doesn't do all 52, or 51, but she goes into more detail. So if you'd like to just get a bit more detail, then have a read of her, do all 52, or 51, but she goes into more detail. So if you'd like to just get a bit more detail, then have a read of her transcript, particularly around about page 25, I think it is in the transcript. So tonight we're actually going to look at these mental factors. So what these mental factors are the judging part of the mind that is actually just deciding whether it likes or dislikes something, and it could say that's a beautiful view, for instance, if it's looking. So it's noting all the aspects, the characteristics. It's making contact with the input, the colours, the shapes, the smells and so on. It can also be liking or disliking. So this is when the actual activity of the mind comes into the picture. So these mental factors we're going to look at in a bit more detail tonight. I just sort of mentioned that there are 6 groups last week in the notes there. So we're just going to have a look at the first group, always present mental factors, and we're going to look particularly at the mental afflictions, and we're going to look particularly at the mental afflictions, the 3, often called the 3 root delusions. So the things that make us experience unhappy experiences. So it's all about experience. We're looking at it's not just an academic exercise looking at all these categories. The main thing is to see how they affect our experience, particularly when we're feeling happy, good outcomes, good events, or unhappy. And these mental factors are the ones that have a bearing on how we're going every day, how we're going in short term and how we're going in the long term. So just looking now notes for tonight, more on mental factors. So these, I've got a very formal definition there because it's good to have a bit of definition. When you read the books, you'll probably see these more formal definitions. A mental factor is an aspect of mind that apprehends a particular quality of an object. So this is all this raw data is coming in to the main minds, what we see, what we hear, what we're thinking, and then it's processed in our mind. This is that's a disease. That's somebody I don't like. This is somebody I do like. So there could be first impressions, or it could be for some reason that the person has harmed us and so on. So let's have a look. So all these processes and processing of the data, the Tibetan teachings on psychology, processes and processing of the data, the Tibetan teachings on psychology say there are 51, but not hard and fast. We can think of the categories could be actually expanded, but just if we have a look at these, first of all, we can look at the three categories. The first one is called always present mental factors. So these are factors, things that are happening in the mind that are always there, always present. That's why they're called always there. And these mental factors also, they could be positive. Positive meaning that they could have a positive result. Okay, for instance, we could feel loving kindness to that person. We could have a negative thing. We might dislike that person and wish them harm if it's an enemy. And it's also possible that we have no particular connection with that person, it's a stranger. So it could be the mental factors, this sort of processing or judge can be positive, negative, or neutral. So to be able to do all the processing, these factors need to be there. First of all, contact, the simple act of meeting an object. Okay, so this object, that contact means that we see, hear, touch, meeting an object. Okay, so this object, that contact means that we see, hear, touch, or think about that person. So it could be a physical thing outside, or it could be thinking about the nice person, or the person we don't like. The first thing is the mind has to make contact with the object. Second one is discernment, and this is seeing what it is. It needs to be able to identify. That's that person, or that is a person I don't know, or that's the person I don't like. I'm just giving the person as an example, but it could apply to some idea, a nice book, a religion. You might like that religion. It could apply to that taste, that thing we've just eaten, or smell, touch. So we sort of need to make contact and then see what it is, identify it, and then so if we've got a nice clear mind, uncluttered mind, we'll be able to see. We'll be good at discerning, seeing what it is, and being observant, I suppose it is too, seeing the characteristics of that object. Next is the feeling. So this is the feeling is like, or it's not so much emotional. It doesn't mean that sort of feeling. It's actually whether we like or dislike it. So that's if it's it could be a sensory feeling. It's delicious ice cream that we always like, or we don't like that particular brand of coffee. These days, the consumer society can be incredibly discerning about whether they have the cappuccino, soyacino, or whatever. So just having too much choice, I suppose. So the main mind of eye conscious, if we're looking at a beautiful sunset, most of us would say it's very beautiful. So we make contact and we identify what it is, a sunset, and we like it. So these feelings can, a sunset, and we like it. So these feelings can be very important, and they could be positive, feeling that person is. I can see that person as a wonderful meditator. I would like that person to be my guru. So it could be a very positive feeling, or it could be negative, neutral feeling or negative. So the next one, making contact, identifying what it is, and then having that feeling, positive, negative, or neutral, like or dislike, and then the intention is what we're going to do with that feeling. So it could be just sometimes called volition, and some of the teachings say this is actually what karma is. It's the wish, the mind moving to do something about that experience of what we've registered in our mind. Okay, so it could mean that we like a particular person. It could mean that we don't like that particular person, and so if we don't like the person, we'll probably avoid them, cross to the other side of the street if they're coming our way. If we do like that person, we'll want to make contact, talk to them, spend time with them, and so on. So what we do with those inputs is the intention, and karma is action. So it's actually could also be a reaction to what's coming into the mind. So just a quick sort of thing on karma. So karma really is what the imprint of what everything we see, everything we experience. So the body, speech, and mind, experience of them. The three doors of body, speech, and mind. So those things all those actions that we take, if we move towards that person we're like or attracted to, that will have a effect on our mind. It could be positive, or it could be negative or neutral. So it's like seeds on this mind stream, karma. There's a whole module on karma, so I won't get too much detail on that at the moment. So that's the intention. Now, attention is the ability to stay on the object, to focus. So this is what we experienced when we did the mindfulness practice on the breath, and it includes also introspection. So mindfulness, watching the breath, introspection, checking, are we watching the breath, watching us watching the breath. So attention can be, good attention can be very, very useful when we're practicing meditation, studying, teaching, analysing and thinking about the teachings. So we can, through meditation, we can enhance attention and learn to direct it. So this is why this practice of shamatha, or mindfulness or single-pointed meditation, is so very important in our practice, because if we can keep the mind focused, then we're going to be actually able to make progress in understanding how the mind works. Non-virtuous. So that's a quick sort of skip through the always present mental factors. And so if you want to have a look at the other two, the object ascertaining mental factors and the variable ones, have a look at the transcript, as I mentioned. So the most of the texts and extracts, the readings, focus mostly on virtuous and non-virtuous mental factors. So Lama Zopa talks about the 3 root delusions in his extract. So the 3 root delusions, root delusions are, or things that are the cause of all our problems, all our suffering, all our misfortune, and so on. So these 3 things are attachment, anger, or aversion. Usually aversion is the best one because it's not always manifesting as anger. Attachment, aversion, and ignorance. So we're going to look particularly at those 3, and then the positive mental factors, the virtuous ones, are non-negative. A lot of the teachings talk about these so not having those non-virtuous mental factors. So these 3 root delusions are basically our downfall, and so it's sort of emphasised that this is important. Until we become enlightened, we need to know what they are and how they work, how they actually cause us all our problems. So another way of putting it, and you'll see some teachers just say our main problems are karma delusions. So the delusion part of it are these root delusions, the attachment, aversion, and ignorance. And so just looking at these 3 in a bit more detail, the attachment is putting too much icing on the cake. So dealing with attachment is we overestimate the qualities of an object or a person. So if we look at say attachment to a person, we actually see that person is 100% perfect. So what we're doing is just, if we've experienced first love or a crush on somebody, it's a good example of attachment where the person is seen as 100% pure. We don't see any faults in that person, which is not correct, because we all have distracted now because I'm seeing a little sign that's come up on the screen that says my connection is unstable. So I just hope that that we can stay connected and stay streaming. I'll continue. So what we like and dislike, I mean, this is things we sort of see on the social media. So it could be people, things, ideas, and as we get bigger and bigger in what we like and dislike, it could actually be the cause of all the problems in the world. If you think about the attachment and aversion to a religion, for instance. And so people who are completely convinced that a religion is the only correct religion will have aversion to those who have a different religion, and possibly will want to have an intention to do something about that. It could be all the religious wars we've had. If you just think about the Crusades, think about the religious wars at the moment. It's going on in different countries. So it could be on a big scale, or it could be just something like, I don't like that song, somebody likes that song. So every type of like and dislike is based on this idea of what it can do for me. In the center of it is actually the ego. This is my kind of music, and this is not my kind of music. So we may not necessarily want to destroy people who don't like this sort of music, but it can be the start of some sort of sorry, I'll use that. I'll come back to that later. It's not quite relevant. Sorry, a bit distracted. So 3 root delusions. The attachment and aversion are like 2 sides of the same coin. So if we're very much attached to that particular person, then we will not want to be separated from them. So it's often called a clinging, or attachment and clinging, or grasping. So when the separation happens, because if we've over-exaggerated, we've actually seen what's not there, at some point there's going to be a realization that person is not the perfect person, that that house is not the perfect, that job is not the perfect person. They're the things that we're getting excited about, overexcited, are going to disappoint us. And so then we have disappointment. And so there's the other side of the person. If we don't, and the other side of it is that if someone takes that person away from us, we suffer. We hate that person, or we dislike that person. So these likes, dislikes are neutral, really based on delusions. We're either putting too much. Well, the very good equanimity meditation called equanimity meditation, which we might do next week. We actually visualize friend, enemy, and stranger, which is usually the way we actually our mind usually categorizes people into those 3. If you think about it, so the people, we walk down the street and just see other people there, and we have a kind of neutral attitude. And the vast majority of people in our life, in the world, will have a neutral attitude towards. So we look at why some people we find we attach to, friends and the relatives, the close ones, and why we particularly feel close to those. If that's a friend, it could be someone who's helped us. They've done a lot for us. It could be something we share the same views. And then we look at the enemy. Why do we dislike that person? Somebody who harmed us. So again, it's what they did for us usually, and the stranger who's done nothing particularly for us. So then we look at actually why is this a valid actually way of dealing with people, for example? And we think very carefully, that person who we like, defriended, unfriended, maybe because it's time elapsed and we just drift away, but it could be something they said to us. So we imagine that the person we think is the best friend possibly could change to an enemy. Similarly, we look at the enemy. Why does that person dislike us? And perhaps if that person helped us, why did we dislike that person? If that person helped us, and we can think of examples who people we've not liked and they've actually done something really good to help us, and we change our mind. Okay, so these categories, friend, enemy, and stranger, this like, dislike, attachment, aversion, it's actually based on a mistaken way of thinking. At the center of that mistaken way of thinking is the self, what is the sense of self. Usually either dislike or kind of coldness, standoffishness. So these 3 root delusions are said to be the cause of, or the other delusions. I'll just quickly give you a few examples of the sub delusions, categories of from these three. I'll just give you some examples from Tujin Yeshi's transcript. So if you do have the transcript there, it's page 35. So just look, let's have a considering or this person. From that comes avarice, that's clinging to one's possessions. So you can think of people who've got so much money, but they're still trying to get more, and they're very, very careful not to lose any, and can cause miserliness. So from this sort of wanting more money, more physical possessions, can come this attachment, avarice. Also can come from that. These are three. They're called derivative delusions. I'm trying to think what the technical name. Self-satisfaction. So this is a false sense of being superior because we have, the perfect house, we have lots of money, the big car, and so on. Self-satisfaction and excitement. Distracted mind, which is unable to focus on virtuous things because they're so distracted by these sensory objects. So that's from attraction, all these, the three derivative delusion. From aversion can come wrath. So somebody is incredibly, anger is incredibly destructive emotion. Vengeance, wanting to get back on that person. Spite, is wanting that person to say, expressing really harsh words to that person, and words that we can actually regret later, to harm that person. Envy, and cruelty. So there's a whole set of different negative emotions that come from these three attachment aversion movements. So there are consequences. Just looking at these categories, basically the definition of non-virtue in Buddhist teachings are that that means suffering, mental, physical, then that's a non-virtuous action. So it's very practical. Whereas virtuous actions, body, speech, and mind, what we do, think, and say, will bring happiness. So that's the definition. That will bring happy consequences. So this is actually what His Holiness the Dalai Lama is not trying, but very successfully saying in the readings article called Happiness, Karma, and Mind. Happiness, Karma, and Mind. I've actually summarised some of the points on page 11 of the readings. If you've got time, I highly recommend it. Fantastic 3 or 4 pages of His Holiness the Dalai Lama explaining why it matters the way we think, how it affects our experiences, our positive and negative experiences. So basically, he's saying the truth of impermanence means that the physical world's changing all the time. Our mental world is changing all the time. So he says, what alone in all this change that has happened since the beginning of time, that the Earth has been evolving since the Big Bang Theory and since man has evolved on Earth, then these truths about impermanence have existed. So what can we rely on in all this? What is immutable? And he says what is mutable is the truth. That's the truth. And if you look sort of beyond, he explains that this is actually the truth that of cause and effect. Okay, the truth that if we have create the causes of virtuous ways of thinking and doing, then it will have beneficial results. If we create negative actions of body, speech, and mind, it will have harmful results. But this is a truth, and this is something he says that is unchanging. So then he goes a bit further and says, well, we can create short-term pleasures, such as the sensory pleasures, wealth, and so on. If we create, and then we can create the causes of that, or we can create what he calls long-term positive results, and that's that will last. Excuse me. The point is that the causes are inner. The causes that produce the temporary happiness are outer. The causes that produce the inner happiness are within our mind. So he gives the example of having few wants, being content with what we've got, having heart with what we've got, and having qualities of patience and forgiveness. So these inner qualities will produce inner benefits to the person and also to others, to those around. So the wise person, he says, will notice this, will see this in their studies when they look into how the mind works and what causes produce what results, and so they will strive to, as much as possible, create the causes for positive results, those positive states of mind: contentment, patience, loving kindness, wisdom, compassion. And when they're experiencing hardship, as we all do, then we'll realise that that's also coming from previous causes that we've done in the past. So we take responsibility for our creating the future, good causes for the future benefit, and when we are having our difficult times, suffering, could be physical, mental, then we realise that is due to actions that we've done in the past. Done in the past refers not just to this life, but previous life. So he says, and calming the mind will help quell coarse consciousness. So this is being distracted by the senses. And so the beginning of that is to do some sort of mindfulness meditation where we look at one particular object. So the busy chattering mind will gradually subside, and we will actually see the inequality of mind, of peace and content. It's like he says, this is the real mind without gross thoughts and without contact of sensory objects. He says the experience of this is like a vast ocean of serenity. So this is one of the benefits of practice, mindfulness and meditation. But he says this is a way of understanding what he calls the relative nature of mind. But then to go to the next, there's another nature of mind, which he says is the ultimate nature of mind. That seeing that there is no me and there's no calm mind, but the ultimate nature of mind is non-duality, where all delusion cease. So this is something very high practice, sometimes called Mahamudra, and our attention is looking at mind itself. So just again, I suggest if you have time, have a look at that article, page 11 of the readings. It seems to bring a lot of these threads about mind and its potential to make sense. So it's already 8 o'clock. I hope we're still connected. And 7 o'clock. Started an hour early. So I want to do this practice on the continuity of mind. It's just really good guided meditation to give us a sense of the movement of consciousness, that consciousness is actually not just this thing that we're experiencing at the moment, but it actually has a past and it has a future. And as we've been seeing in the last couple of weeks, the definition of mind or consciousness is, or the cause of mind or consciousness is, the definition is it's clear and able to apprehend things. The cause is that it's caused by a previous mode of mind or consciousness. So in this particular practice on continuity of mind, it's actually just, if you want to do it at home from a text, or just have something to look at, Thupten Gyesi's extract, her transcript, page 17, she actually has the guide, a simplified form of the meditation on continuity of mind. So there's an expansive flow. And it also helps us to appreciate how the idea of karma, how the mind can be the basis of our experience. Our experiences put these seeds or potentialities onto the mind. Everything we do, think, and say has kind of an imprint on the mind. And this mind is being carried along with all these imprints, positive and negative. And so the seeds at a later time, usually not immediately, the seeds will ripen, and actions done that are positive will have a positive effect on our well-being. Actions that have a negative, of course, that are inspired by the three root delusions, attachment, aversion, and ignorance, will have a negative effect. So we're looking not so much at what's the content of the mind, but how it's this idea of a flow. So so what we do in the actual practice, we look at the thoughts. Okay? We're just sort of like going into the movie theater and seeing what's on the screen. We're looking at the thoughts as if we're not particularly interested in their content, but just as a neutral bystander, watching what's happening on the other side of the street. So then we notice that there's this, it's almost like a traffic jam of almost like a soap opera. There's so much stuff. There could be memories, there could be snippets of conversation we might have had today. But we actually watch this collection, and when we sit down and just invite the thoughts in and watch them, it seems that there are more affected by what's happening around them. We actually don't really notice what's going on. There's so much, this internal stream of what Yeshi sometimes calls garbage thoughts. So the everyday sort of, when we look at it, we actually see how really surprisingly boring it is. We actually could be thinking of something again and again, what we're going to have for dinner, some sort of trivial domestic task. So by looking at what's happening, we actually sort of be aware of what happened this morning and seeing that connection. Is there any connection between that mind we woke up with after the sleep and the mind that we had lunchtime and the mind we're having now? The waking up mind, the midday mind, and the mind today. So the thoughts might have been different, but is there connection? So we're asking ourselves, is that morning mind related to the current mind? And then we go back to the nighttime mind. We might have had dreams last night. And sometimes if we've had dreams and we wake up, we can feel the effect of the dreams on our mind. So there's a connection between the dreaming mind, waking up mind. That could actually affect our day. Positive dreams could have been imprint on our mind. And then we go back to yesterday, then we go back to last week, And maybe just think of one or two things that happened. We could maybe think of what happened a few months ago. You might remember the lockdown. You might remember pre-lockdown. We're not getting involved in the actual content, but we're looking at little parts of the mind as we go back in time and seeing that mind. It's related to the next moment of mind, the yesterday mind, today's mind, and the current mind. Go right back to childhood and think of some aspects of our mind there, maybe a few experiences that happened, and we can think, well, what's the connection between that childhood mind and the current mind? Is it the same mind? The content of the childhood mind will be different experiences, but it's the same mind. We're asking ourselves and trying to experience that continuity. Then we go back to the time of birth, the mind we're born with. Most of us can't remember, some can. And then we go back to the mind of conception. If there was a mind at the moment of birth, there must have been a mind before birth in the womb. And if joined, conception, or did it happen? If it did, then is it the half of the mind come from the mother and half from the father? Did it come from nowhere, that mind of conception, or did it come from a previous moment of mind? But this is to help us to think as to whether there could be the possibility of life, mind before this life. Okay? If we accept that each moment of mind is caused by a previous moment, think about the possibility of a previous moment of mind before we came into this life, possibly past life. Then we come back to the centre, to the current, not the centre, but the present, and thinking of the same principle. If this moment of mind causes the next, flows into the next, flows into the next, until the time of death. And those future minds that are going to happen could be positive or negative. If we have some appreciation of what input into the mind will cause positive results, beneficial results to ourselves and others, then we can focus on increasing those positive actions of body, speech, and mind, and avoiding as much as possible the negative actions of body, speech, and mind between now and the time of death. And at the time of death, we're just left with the mind. We have to leave the body, and the mind will go to the next life. And the only thing that can help at the moment of death is what the practice we've done with our mind, our mental, our meditation, our Dharma practice. And do it. Okay, so get comfortable. Can be sitting, lying, or cross-legged on a chair, or lying down. Main thing is to be comfortable. Okay, we begin our practice on the continuity of mind, looking at the continuity of mind by just a few moments breath meditation to calm the mind, watching the breath. And now we begin the practice by moving from the breath as our object to consciousness, looking at what's happening in our mind. Just watching thoughts, allowing thoughts to enter the mind. Not engaging, but looking. Could be feelings, not just, could be images. Maybe we're bored, maybe we're hungry. Allowing those thoughts, images, emotions to come and then letting them go. Oh, many thoughts there are. Memories, not judging, we're maintaining a neutral attitude. So looking at moments of mind, and just catching one moment of mind and thinking to go back and the connection of that moment of mind with our minds, say before we did this session, before we looked at this video, the mind this afternoon, the mind this morning, thinking back what we did, perhaps what we felt, and then the mind when we woke up this morning. So there's different points of time in today's experiences, moments of mind. Is the waking up mind this morning connected to this current mind? That connection of each moment of mind leading to the next. The connection, not so much the contact, what was happening in the mind, but that connection, the mind stream. Perhaps going back, you might be able to remember dreams from last night, the dreaming mind. Thinking of the connection between the dreaming mind and the current mind, the moments we remember from yesterday's mind. The weekend mind, maybe remembering what we did. Maybe the mind before lockdown for people in Sydney, the different things we did before we were restricted, those non-lockdown moments of mind connected to this morning's mind, connected to the current mind, that continuity, feeling that stream of consciousness. Next step is to go back a long way to childhood mind. A few moments we remember in our childhood. So the content of that mind, that mind of the child mind, the connection between that and the teenager leading to the next, up until this current moment of mind. If there was that childhood mind we can remember, then there must have been a mind at the moment of birth, the baby mind. Probably can't remember, but accept the possibility that the moment of birth mind was connected to the childhood mind, was connected to the adult mind, connected to the current mind. And the moment of birth mind, caused by a previous moment of mind, when did that begin? Did it begin at conception? Remember each moment of mind caused by the previous, not by a physical cause. Where did that previous moment of mind come from? It couldn't be from the parents. That's the physical cause. The two cells, the sperm and the ovum, can't be the cause of the conception mind. Perhaps a previous moment of mind in a previous life. Entering the womb. Think of the possibilities. What are the other possibilities? It came from nowhere. Now coming back to this current mind, the mind we've been watching, this current mind, will be connected to the next moment of mind, the mind when we finish this session, the mind when we go to bed tonight, the dreaming mind, and then the mind tomorrow, and for the rest of our life until the moment of death, a stream of connected moments of mind from now until the moment of death. At that time, the mind will have to leave the body. At that moment of death, when the mind leaves the body, the only thing that can be a benefit to us is all the positive actions of body, speech and mind that we've created, our meditation, our practice, our purification, our mindfulness, our compassion, our wisdom. The causes of beneficial experiences. So the conclusion is, we are brought to this moment by a previous mind stream, a previous imprints on the mind stream of our actions of body, speech and mind. And now we have the opportunity to study the mind, to understand the mind, create positive inputs to the mind, using our compassion and wisdom. The only thing that will help us develop positive experiences and to be able to become liberated from all the afflictions. The mental afflictions is our practice, our Dharma practice. So the conclusion is, in the time we have left with this perfect human body, with the human mind, we need to make the most of the time. Spend our time in the most beneficial way. Watch every action of body, speech and mind, avoiding as much as possible negative actions of body, speech and mind, creating the causes, positive causes on our mind stream. Just to conclude the meditation, we'll just do a brief dedication. Dedication is to preserve all the benefits of our any positive imprints we've made from this practice we've done tonight, all the practice we have done in the past, will do in the future. We dedicate it to a positive end, and I'm going to just read Lama Yeshe's special dedication, so Lama Zopa Rinpoche's special dedication he recommended we do for the coronavirus, the COVID-19 virus. However many sick sentient beings there are, may they quickly be freed of all sickness. May all the sickness without exception of all transmigrating beings never occur again. May the Buddha Dharma last for a long time. May the sentient beings in this world meet the Buddha Dharma and achieve enlightenment as quickly as possible. Dedicating to that. Okay, so that's the session tonight. And if you've got any questions, and you do have my email, you're welcome to email me. It's been great to see so many people staying for the whole session, and I hope you've got some benefit from it. I hope the the stream, survive the hour, and I hope to see you next week. Stay well, and all the best. Thank you.